Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Live with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, here in a very snowy Scotland in the United Kingdom, which, of course, Scotland, as we all know, is the capital and centre of the known universe, and probably also other universes, parallel universes, fourth, fifth, and maybe even sixth dimensions. I don't know how long I can keep that rather patriotic intro going, but I will try because I think it's entertaining. But if you are bored by it, that's fine. Anyway, I hope everybody has had a good week and has had a good weekend so far. It's been a busy one, or at least most of last week was hectically busy for me, up until Thursday. Thursday I was not working because it's St. Andrew's Day here, which is basically St. Andrew is the patron saint of Scotland, so it's kind of like our national day, if you like. You know, like in Wales they have St. David's Day, down in England they have St. George's Day, and, you know, so on and so forth. Different countries have different patron saints, and some really celebrate them very publicly. It's a proper public national holiday, and for some others it's not really. In Scotland it's officially a public holiday, but not everybody really, you know, shops remain open, banks remain open, doctors' surgeries remain open, so from that point of view, it's not really necessarily very much observed as a public holiday, even though it officially is. So that was Thursday. Then Friday, I'm actually on PTO, paid time off, until next Monday. So not even the Monday coming, but the Monday after, because I have time left to take before the end of the year. So I thought, why the heck not? Just take it. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm not working at the moment. I'm enjoying some much needed rest and recuperation, I think is the phrase. So I hope everyone's doing good. We have a really great question to start the show off with. Thanks to Chris Mrackner for that. Christopher is an awesome bloke. If you ever get the chance to have a conversation with him about music, you will find that he is a very, very passionate and committed person to music. Which is very, very cool. He has an orchestral background, which is great. So he does like a lot of composing. So that's why you'll find some of his questions that he posts here are really kind of composition, or using Studio One as a tool for composing kind of questions, which is great. So he's asked a question about takes to layers, which we are going to get into in just a few minutes. So Chris, if you're watching, stay watching. Because we will start with your question, and just Bob has just posted another question as well. So yeah, use it or lose it. Exactly. I don't want to lose my PTO because I can only roll over 3 days into next year, so I didn't want to have any left over. Anyway, let's go see who was here first, and I believe it was just Bob, which is awesome. He got in here first. Amazing. Well done, Bob. Followed by Billy, followed by Sean Aaron and Ron Figura, and of course Chris, who I was just talking about. And the W5 family are also here. And we got Don Oliver, we got John Hawk, we got Kevin from Kevin's Guitar Stories. And we've got Cal Traduziak, and we got Gyro99, and we got... that's it so far. So... yeah, so that's... And we got Sean Carr, who's just joined us as well, which is awesome. Welcome, guys. Welcome, everybody. Whether you are brand new, and I don't think we've got anybody who is brand spanking new. But if you are watching this and you've just stumbled across it and you're not in the live stream but you're watching it on replay, I'm glad you're watching. Welcome. We do this live every Sunday at 6 p.m. Central Time. I also do a compatriot show which is on Wednesdays, and it's called Songwriting Simplified, and we do songwriting. So basically we talk about chords, we talk about melody, we talk about lyric writing, we talk about form and structure. We talk about music theory, so understanding chord and scale relationships and those kind of things. We talk about improvisation. I nearly couldn't say the word then. And subjects all around those kind of subjects. And the idea being to kind of break things down and make things simple, make the complex simple and easy to understand and easy to apply, because that's the whole point of that show, is to get you writing songs and making music. This show is more orientated, and there, I see I used the correct word there, orientated, not that oriented nonsense that you Americans go on about, orientated around Studio One and recording, mixing, mastering questions. And both shows are question and answers, so they are led by you guys. I tend to have some subjects and some topic ideas for the songwriting show, but this show in particular is very driven by your questions, which is great because we've got two good ones to start with. So we are going to get into those very quickly just now. So let's get into Christopher's question first. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to set up how to answer Christopher's question. So let's go through his question. He says, could you give a demonstration on using takes? I'm trying to make additional recording of the same tracks without stopping and pausing. I don't want to overwrite what I have already recorded. Okay, takes to layers is your friend. So let's go over to Studio One. And I have a new song here with a new track, and you'll notice that there is this nice little panel at the bottom here that I have opened up. And you'll be like, I have never seen that before. How did you open that? Okay, for those of you that don't know what this is the record panel, and it's got some handy little tools here. So we got record mode, and we got instrument loop record. So this concerns audio. This concerns instruments such as Mai Tai, Presence, Mojito, and any third-party virtual instrument. And these are different recording things that you can do here. And then this is still to do with MIDI here. We've got a note repeat, which you can turn on. And you can key remote it, which is handy if you're... There's a really handy use application for this, which I'm going to have to actually devote like part of a show to. And then you've got note arrays, which again is useful. So, record mode. There are 3 different modes here. And actually, you can combine this one here, input quantize, with the other 2. Takes to layers or replace. What does input quantize do? Input quantize, this is very, very cool. In fact, you know, this is, I kind of semi-misspoke. This panel here also is to do with instruments as well, but this is instrument specific, this section. So this does instruments and audio as well. So you can either have takes to layers, I'll explain that in a minute, add a layer for every new take, or you can go into replace. And this replaces overlapping data when you're recording. So let's say I record and I put this in replace mode and I take off takes to layers and I hit record with this loop mode engaged. Oh, helps if you had it record enabled. And if I then go and hit record like this, and I just keep talking for a wee bit here, when this loops round, it's going to replace what I have already recorded. Now, sometimes you might want that. So even if you're not in loop record mode, you might want it to replace the last thing you did, especially if you're doing, maybe you're doing a lot of guitar takes and you don't mind about whether it replaces one take with the next or not. You just want to keep doing it over and over and over and over again. So now if I hit stop there, now you will see it has kept the takes, right? But it's only looped this section. I don't know why it's only looped that section. You just want to keep doing it over and over. Oh, that's because that was where I stopped it. So if I go to take 2, there's take 2, and there's take 1. Hit record like this. So there's take 1, there's take 2, there's take 3. So it has kind of kept them as takes. But that's because we're in loop record mode. If I did not have the loop record mode off, let's say I now delete all of that. Now that I've hit delete, all of those are gone, including the layers. So if I now go and I hit record again, and then I stop, and do that, it's in replace mode. So it's just going to record over, and actually, let's just do it this way. So if I record, and I record that, and I go, okay, I'm going to start again, and I'm just going to record straight over the top, like that, and like that, and like that, and I'm going to go, no, still not right. Okay, let's go again, and I'm just doing another take, another take, another take, another take, another take. Now, you'll notice that there are no layers, okay, because we're in replace mode, okay? So let's get rid of all of that. This time, let's put takes to layers on, and we'll turn off replace mode. And we'll put the loop mode back on. Now, with this on, let's say I am doing a lot of piano takes. So for this, maybe we could change this routing over here to the piano. And let's say what we want to do now is we want to just record, and I just want to record several takes over this. Because maybe it's something that I want to do a composite, maybe, to basically carve out the perfect take from like different bits from different takes. Maybe this is what I want to do. Then I can just hit record. Now when I stop, you'll now see we've got a whole bunch of different takes. Now this one at the top is the one that I was last on, which I obviously did not complete the full loop, which is why this one and this one are identical. Okay, so that's the last one I did, and this is the first one. Now if you look at this arrow if you look at this arrow here, I can promote this take to the top, and this one could be my master take. So if I take off record enable at the moment, Okay, now what you can do is you can make a composite. So let's say I want these two chords to fill in this gap at the beginning here. So if I just do that, now that promotes that part up to the top there. But let's say maybe actually what I really want is I want this bit instead. Now, apart from that little gap there, that loops pretty nicely, actually, especially from the end into that beginning. So that loops pretty nicely. So if I wanted to make this into a loop, that would work. Now, here's the fun thing here, is at the moment, these are all unpacked takes. So I can select any of these from this list here to display. Now, let's say what I want to do is I like everything that I recorded actually, and I want to preserve them as individual tracks. So if I select this one, if I hold shift and click on the last one, right click and go unpack selected layers to tracks. Boom. And now I can hide that. And now I've got all of these takes on different tracks. So maybe this is a workflow that you might want for a particular scenario that you're working in. Or maybe you don't want that. If you don't want that, that's cool. We can undo that quite easy. There we go. And I can go back to that. And I can expand layers, and now there's all my layers back. And I can stretch that out a little bit so that join is a little bit more natural maybe. There we go, that's not bad. You see, that doesn't loop quite perfectly now. It's not going to loop perfectly anymore. But that's basically how you can use the take to layers workflow to accomplish a bunch of different things. So you can either unpack the recordings to separate tracks if that's what you want to do, or you can make a composite of the different bits that you did. So if you like this particular part from, I mean, this bit here was taken from take 4, and I just happened to like it and thought that it might go well with the first take. Kind of does. There's kind of like a little intro into that, into the rest of that first take. Kind of works quite nicely. Because there was a long gap there anyway, it fills that gap. Kind of serves it quite nicely. So yeah, so that's what you can do. You can basically swipe along, find a bit that you want, and it automatically promotes it up to this master track. And then once you're happy with your master track, you can then basically select all of that, and you can do Control B to bounce. And now that becomes one new take. All right, so that is kind of how you can do that particular workflow. It's not something I use a lot unless I'm doing like a piano solo on a track, or I'm recording a flugelhorn solo, or I'm recording a guitarist and they need to do a bunch of takes on a particular solo section. I will just loop that solo section and just let them play and play and play and play. And they'll maybe do 15, 20, 30 takes maybe, and then we'll composite the perfect solo out of those 30 takes, where we go, oh, this phrase works really well, this is really nice, and then we'll grab this other one from this other take, oh, that's really great too, and then this other one from this other take, and then maybe most of take 3, and then maybe just the last phrase of take 1 that we really, really liked, and they all get promoted automatically up onto the master track, and then you can just play that master track, and you've got yourself your perfectly composed, improvised solo. It's an improvised solo. It's made up of bits that were improvised, and you've just made them flow together using takes to layers. It's a very, very powerful and effective way to work in order to be able to get a part right. So I've done this, as I say, a fair bit, but I don't use it a lot. Input quantize is something that I don't use unless I'm using MIDI instruments, like virtual instruments, and I know I'm going to be needing to be very on the grid and very precise, maybe very precise 16th notes or very precise 8th notes for a certain type of music that I'm doing. Then yes, I'll put input quantize on. And what input quantize will do is it quantizes on the way in, so as you're recording it will quantize it for you. You don't need to go and do it after the fact. So again, that's kind of useful if what you're doing, you know, the style of music that you work in a lot is right on the grid, then that's a very, very useful way for you to be working. In my case, I'm working in jazz. I don't do a lot of quantizing. So I may kind of manually shift notes here and there to make them feel a bit better, or to tidy up a slightly loose or slightly sloppy performance in a patch here and there, but I otherwise don't do any quantizing at all. So now, the other question is, how did I get this panel to appear? There are two ways you can do this. One is you go to the View menu, and then you click on this option here, Record Panel, or you can press Shift, Alt, and R. So Alt is going to be Option on a Mac. So those are the two ways you can make that appear. You can either click there, or you can press Shift, Alt, and R. So Shift, Alt, and R. There you go. That makes it toggle on and off. All right. So if you want to make that panel appear and you don't feel like grabbing your mouse and moving it to the View menu, then Shift, Alt, R. And that'll bring that up every time. Okay, I'm going to turn it off just now. Oh, wait, I did not want to do that. I have no idea what keyboard shortcut I pressed to make that happen, but it was not the right one. All right, so I hope that answers that question. And so, yeah, that's the question that Peter Brooks had there. He says, how do you get the menu to appear at the bottom? And Neil Thompson had the same question. So I thought I would kill two stones with one bird there. No, two birds with one stone. Just Bob asks, Waves has a track spacer plugin to help duck instruments, etc. from each other for clarity in recordings. Which Studio One plugin is best for stucking? For stucking? For ducking, not stucking. I don't even know what stucking is. Pro EQ or something else compressor. Yes, sidechaining is your friend. So let's go and grab another new song, and I can show you how to do a wee bit of sidechaining. So for this, I'm going to need a bit of drums. Let's see. Am I going to be able to find just a damn kick drum here? Let's see what this one's like. Yep, that will do the job. So let's whack that in there. Now what we'll do is we will just pull this down just a little bit so it doesn't clip. There we go. And then we'll duplicate that 4 times. I'm going to bounce that sucker together. Doink. And then I'm going to duplicate that. So now we've got ourselves a nice little 4-bar kick loop. Perfect. Now, I want to grab something that I can use as a bass. So let's go for a bass. Let's find something that's going to work here. Something signy. I don't know. Let's try that one. That's got a bit of a harder attack. I don't want that. Let's try this. There we go. We'll do this one. It's fine. So I'll grab that and I will grab a pencil, scroll down a bit. And then, actually, I should have done this to start with, really. There we go. And then we will set this loop zone up. All right, so that sounds a little bit boring at the moment. So what we want to do is we want to get the console open over here. And we want to close that. We want to close that. Let's just give ourselves a little bit of screen real estate. There we go. Now, I want a compressor on the Mai-Tai. So let's go grab just the regular stock native compressor. Where are you? There you are. And let's whack that on here. And then what we can do is we can set this up so we have like I don't know, 20:1 ratio. Why the heck not? And then we'll pull this threshold down quite a bit. And then the key thing here is this sidechain section here. So if I now click on sources here, there is only one source, and I want to create a send, and I want to pre-fade a send. And now that I've got that, notice what is immediately happening here. You can see exactly what's happening there. Every time the kick drum hits, it triggers the compressor to turn down the bass, according to my attack and release settings here. So now I've got the attack set really, really fast. So it's immediately grabbing it. I don't want it to quite do that. And then the secret is to time the release so you get the bass coming back in on the upbeat. That's what I'm trying to achieve. There we go. And it's just about thereabouts on the upbeat 8th note, more or less. And that is how you do some ducking. Now, this is only one application of ducking. The other one is to create a music bed. If like you're doing a podcast or something like that, and you have a music bed and you want to talk over the top of the music bed, you apply exactly the same principle that we've done just here to the music bed. And you may have different settings for this. All right, so let's go grab something that is not that way inclined. So let's go and look in construction kits and see if we can find something that might suit our mood. Yeah, that will do. So what we'll do is we'll mute these two tracks here, and we will whack this into this track here. We'll turn it down a wee bit. We'll take off the loop because we're not bothered by it. And now I will create a vocal track. There we go. And I'm going to set me up to record. And I'm actually, should I get rid of those two tracks? No, maybe not. So I need to go back and go grab another compressor. And this time I'm going to put the compressor on my music bed. And I'm going to do the same thing. Maybe not quite such a massive smackdown, but we'll see. And then the release, I want maybe to be a little bit longer. We'll test this out as we go, and then I'm going to pull this back. And what we're going to do is I'm going to record. Now, what you'll find is that this won't happen in real time. It's not going to duck the music in real time whilst I'm recording. But you'll hear it after the fact, all right? So let me just hit record here, and I will talk over this. All right. Hello, and welcome to this crazy podcast that I think you're all going to love. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Here we go. There we go. And so now, if we play this back. All right. Hello and welcome. I didn't set this up properly, did I? I did not, because I'm an idiot. I forgot to set this up. So now I want that one to be ascend, another pre-fade ascend. All right. Hello and welcome to this crazy podcast. Hang on, I've set this up wrong. I have set this all up completely wrong. Let me do that again. Because all that seemed to do was just turn up the music bed instead of turn it down. Yeah, hang on, what's going on here? Oh, I'm doing it completely backwards. That needs to be... Hang on. What am I doing wrong here? All right. Anyway, I appear to be doing something wrong here. And I don't even know what I'm doing wrong. Because I set this up in exactly the same way. Let's maybe start with this being turned down quite a bit. All right. Hello and welcome to this crazy podcast that I think you're all going to love. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Here we go. Okay, there you go. That sounds a bit better. All right. Hello and welcome to this crazy podcast that I think you're all going to love. I hope. And again, you can just play around with the settings. All right. Hello and welcome to this crazy podcast that I think you're all going to love. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Here we go. All right. Hello and welcome to this crazy podcast that I think you're all going to love. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Here we go. All right, so there you go. So you need a much longer release time than I was allowing myself for there. But you get the idea. That is, and yeah, the ratio is a little bit too high. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm absolutely slamming it, but you don't really need to slam it. You know, maybe something like that. All right. Hello and welcome to this crazy podcast that I think you're all going to love. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Here we go. Depends on how much compression you want to do, and you can play with the threshold if you want to do it. All right. Hello and welcome to this crazy podcast that I think you're all going to love. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Here we go. Depends upon how much you want the music bed to be ducked down when the vocal comes in. If you want it to be really, really obviously ducked, then you can really dial the threshold back. It depends. Depends on how much you want to affect it or not, or whether you want it just tapped down so that the voice is heard. All right. Hello and welcome to this crazy podcast that I think you're all going to love. So it kind of depends on what you want to achieve and how much you want the music bed to be out of the way of your voice track. You might want it really, really pushed back or not. It depends upon what you want to do. But I hope you get the idea of this is how you can duck one audio source by using a compressor to trigger another source, that kind of thing. It's side chaining. You use it a lot in podcasting, but also in EDM, as I've shown. So I've given you a couple of different scenarios there for ducking. And yes, it should never be that obvious. Yeah, I was exaggerating it so you could actually hear it being ducked. But for the most part, in most radio broadcasts or most podcasts, it's not really massively pushed back. It's just tapped down a little bit. And then it's a case of getting the release time right so that it doesn't necessarily immediately pop back, obviously, and you get a pumping effect. You want it to just tap down and then gently come back up. So you want a nice long release so it gently comes back up again. But yeah, I hope that helps. That's a bunch of really, really good questions there. All right. Let's see. If you do that with some fat chords, you start making future bass. Yes, exactly right. And you can sidechain so many different elements at so many different speeds, so many different amounts in EDM. In some EDM styles, you will find that there are multiple compressors sidechaining different elements for different purposes to create different amounts of ducking and pumping and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I hope that helps. And Just Bob said, yeah, that helps a lot. He's new to ducking. Yes. My ducks sound horrible. Glad to see you're in the same boat. Well, yeah, it was more, I was just actually messing it up is what I was doing. I do know what I'm doing. I was just messing up my demo. And then I got myself in a twist there. But that is essentially how you do it. Yeah. And we got quite a few people watching here. I think we got like 25 people here. Yeah, we did have 25, 26 at one point, and we're down to 22 now. So, you know what I say? I like parity between viewers and likes. So if you're here and you're watching and you have not hit the like button yet, please hit the like button, especially if you like the demos that I'm doing. And if you've got a question, if you're not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button, and you will only have to wait 2 little minutes, and then the chat will be open to you and you can ask your question. Start your question by typing @Jonny, and then it'll come up with Jonny Lipsham Studios. Just click on that and that will autofill it for you, so you don't have to type that out. And then type your question, and that helps me pick out your question from the rest of the chat. You'll see that a lot of people have done that, because what happens for me on my side of it, of the chat, is it highlights my name in red, and I know that way it's a question or it's a comment directed at me, rather than just you guys talking amongst yourselves, and I therefore miss a question. And I don't want to miss your questions. Your questions are really important to me. So we got 15 minutes left of the show. I'm just going to pop up and see if I've missed anything. Yes, Kevin says, is there a gain plugin in Studio One? Okay, that's another good question. Gain in Studio One, because this has changed quite a bit. So, back in the day, if you wanted to add gain to a track, or rather to a channel in the mixer, you had to use the Mix Tool plugin, which is still in Studio One, by the way, is this guy here, and this has a little gain knob on it, so you can add or decrease gain from the channel. That is what you used to have to do. No more. Since Studio One 5, if you go into this little wrench icon over here, you will see in the channel components section here that there is a checkbox that says input controls. Let's click on that. What happens? Look at what we have at the top here. We've got a gain control. So let's say I want to turn down this this music bed track here just a bit more. So let's just play just the music bed. Which, as you can see, is being ducked still. You just turn this little knob here and it turns it down. It sets the gain level for you. You don't have to use Mix Tool anymore. The only thing now that Mix Tool is good for is the DC offset. And that's pretty much it. It serves otherwise not very many functions anymore, because, you know, the polarity controls and the gain controls are now built into this input control section. So what about Mix Tool? Well, what does it do now? So now, the only real thing it has is the DC offset. DC offset is to do with an imbalance in the recorded audio. And sometimes you can see that with a waveform where there is a waveform peaking down here, but not so much above the center line. So it's kind of like down towards the bottom, but not up towards the top. On a mono source, you might see this. And this is a visual way you can check whether there is DC offset as a problem. And if there is, you can bring this in and you can click on this guy here, and it will address most DC offset problems, and the audio will be restored. It will sound better for a start. And then you can either use this gain knob or not, as the case may be, whichever you want to do. But as you can see here, there is, in fact, a DC blocker preset. There's swap channels. There's mid-side transform, which is a thing if you're using the splitter. So if you're using the splitter and you're doing mid-side processing, so you're affecting the mids on one side of the split in a different way to the sides, and you want to transform back so that they are, you know, it's matched again instead of being broken up into mid and side. You want them to be joined back together again. Then that's what the MS transform button is for. And then you've got these different settings. So if you want to immediately reduce something by -24, you can, or add 24, or add 6, or 3, or 9, or whatever you want to do. Those are there. But really, most of what the mix tool did is now up here. So we can now, for the most part, remove the mix tool and just generally not use it. Don't really need to use it very much anymore. All right, so that is another good question. And then Neil's asking, he says, I think one of those icons down by the metronome stuff. Okay, what are you talking about, Neil? He says, I could have sworn there was a way to also make the record panel appear from clicks down at the bottom. If there is, I'm not seeing it. Nope. You can make the MIDI monitor appear by clicking on there, or the performance monitor that appears by clicking down the bottom, or you can open the song setup panel from down there. I'm not seeing where you can open the record panel anymore from down there, if it was down there. Don't remember that it was, but I could be wrong. Oh, there you go. It's that little cog wheel. There you go. You've got good eyes, Neil, because that's what it is. If you click that cog wheel, that opens the... that also opens that record panel. So you can either go View, Show Record Panel, or you can click this cogwheel, or you can do, what was it? Shift, Alt, and R, or Shift, Option, R. Okay, so good spot there, Neil. Well done. Yeah, and Louis says, yeah, you can also click the gear icon under the record mode. You can also click the gear icon under record mode replace next to off near the metronome area to show that menu. Yes, that's right. All right, let's go see if there's anything else. John Hathwaite says the gain control is very useful for zeroing tracks on the faders. Basically, you have all the imported audio, then use the gain knob to get them to peak at 0. Yes, if you want everything to peak at 0. I don't want things to peak at 0. Generally speaking, it depends upon the style of music that you're working in. I never want my tracks to peak at 0 dB. No point. There's just no point, because it's just not really necessary. You can if you want everything to peak at 0 dB and then go from there, then yes, you can do that. But that's not what I would do for the way I work. Old School Funk and Soul says, that's my gain staging tool of choice. Works perfectly, input control. Yeah, absolutely. Now, another cool trick with gain staging. If you want to gain stage without having to listen to the audio, you can do that. It's very, very cool. Let's turn that off and turn that off and turn that off. So if I set these, let's see, where is it? I've got these set in pre-fader metering just now. So if I set them to post-fader metering. All right. Hello and welcome to... That's funny. That's funny how that kind of sort of worked. All right. Hello and welcome. So now that I've got those all muted, let's put that loop back on. I can set these guys into pre-fader. And now what you will see is, apart from this one, because this is just a MIDI track. But these three audio tracks here, see, these are now peaking, but there is no audio. So I can use the gain controls to make sure, let's say I want these to be peaking at, say, minus 12 dB. Well, that one is peaking way above, so I can turn that one down. And I'm just, basically I'm eyeballing it. And that one could go up a little bit. And then that one's peaking a little bit too loud. That's okay. So now I've got everything peaking at minus 12. And I'm doing that without having to listen to the music. So it's definitely one way to do gain staging without actually having to listen to everything over and over and over and over again. Especially if you're the kind of person like I am, where I want to do all the setup for a mix without listening to the music. I only want to listen to the music when I'm actually mixing. But when I'm actually prepping for mixing, I'm not interested in listening to the music. Because I want to listen to the music with completely objective, fresh ears. And if I've been listening to it whilst doing this kind of gain staging process, then instead of actually paying attention to the gain staging, my ears are automatically going, oh, that needs fixed, oh, that needs fixed, that needs fixed, that needs fixed. And I'm starting to think about mixing before I'm actually at that point. So this is what I do, is I mute everything, and then I put the meters into pre-fader metering, and I just get to work gain staging that way. And I'm just watching the meters. I'm doing it by eyes rather than by ears. And I know that sounds like it's counterintuitive, and I know that sounds like it's wrong. And some people will say, yes, that's wrong. You should not be doing that. But see, for me, gain staging is all about getting everything at a level, at a platform. Which is why I don't really call it gain staging. I just call it platforming. I'm just leveling everything off, so everything is starting at the same level. In John Hathwaite's case, he likes everything to be set at 0 dB. I don't. For me, the larger the mix, the more channels I have in the mix, maybe the slightly higher I want that level to sit at. The slightly lower I want that to sit at. So for the most part, for an average ordinary number of channels, maybe 30 or 40 channels, then minus 12 dB, it's an arbitrary figure that I pluck out of the air. If I've got 100 or more channels, then I maybe set that to minus 18. If I've only got a handful like I have here, minus 6 is perfectly fine. And that's it. It's just, I'm just making sure that everything's peaking at the same level. Why? Because it makes mixing easier. It gives you headroom. That's all it does. There's nothing magic about it. And for me anyway, it has very little to do with the signal to noise ratio, because in the digital domain, that's not really an issue, because, these days we have like 144 decibels of headroom against noise, because the noise floor is that low. It's practically non-existent. You pretty much don't hear it. So back in the old analog days, you were constantly fighting to get your signal louder than the noise. So that's why it was important to record as close to 0 dB as you could, because by doing that, you could give yourself more signal to noise. So you had a greater ratio of signal to noise. Nowadays, we don't need to worry about that, because we're in the digital domain, and we've got, good audio interfaces that have amazing conversion built into them. So we don't have to worry about that noise ratio anymore. So from that point of view, gain staging is a little bit of a misnomer. It's not really a necessary thing. But if you want to give yourself a good amount of headroom to allow for the gain increase over time as you're mixing, when you're using compressors and EQs and limiting and those kind of tools, that's going to increase gain over time across your mix. So, when you compare the mix you started off with to, kind of the finished mix, the loudness ratio between the two is going to be quite large, because your finished mix is going to be louder than what it started out to be, because you've added gains through EQ and compression and limiting and other effects as well. So that's why I call it setting a platform. So that's what I do. I set a platform. I don't want to listen to the music. Not interested in the music at that point. This is purely just math and getting a level. Once I've done that, I unmute everything and I start listening. I'll maybe even put the metering back into post-fader metering mode again. So that's it. There is, in the modern era with the digital world, where everything is being recorded straight into an audio interface, straight into the computer, there is no noise floor. It's practically non-existent. You don't even need to think about it. So signal to noise ratio is not even a thing now, really. I don't really hear it talked about anymore because it's just so low that you don't even have to worry about it, because you're never going to have a problem with it. You are never ever going to encounter a problem with noise, because the noise floor is at minus 144 dB. It's way down. So don't worry about it. So yeah, Mike Johnson says, going back to analog days, it can be confusing for folks now. Yeah, it can. Yeah, for sure. Those of us that have been around in the music industry since before computers came into the scene and things started getting processed digitally rather than, through tape machines. Those of us that predate the digital era, like I do, like John does, and Mike Johnson does, and, a few other people here as well. Yeah, we had to concern ourselves about the signal to noise ratio. It's one of the first things you learn about that ratio, and you learn how to get a good hot signal that exceeds that noise floor, so that you're not clipping or causing excessive amounts of distortion. You're getting a good clean signal with as little noise as possible. Now we don't have to worry about that. It's not even a thing. School Funk Soul says, I never used to gain stage. Maybe right at the end. I sometimes have to do it during mixing. It's important to get peaking and distortion. Adding EQ. Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's why like I say, I don't call it gain staging. But that's why I start with setting a level platform for everything. For that very reason. In that I want to avoid, overloading the master fader whilst I'm mixing, because then I have to go and turn everything down, and then I carry on doing EQ and compression, and I find, oh no, I'm clipping again, so I have to go and turn everything down again. That's not a fun game to play. I've been in the digital domain now since 2003, so I've been in the digital domain fully, and 100% in the box since 2003, and so that's nearly 21 years, and in that time I can count on one hand, so 5 fingers, 5 times at the most that I have clipped or overloaded the main output. Because I learned way back in 2003, don't need to do that anymore. Now I just set a nice conservative level for everything. You don't have to record really, really loudly anymore. You can record nice and quiet. You can record at minus 12, minus 18 dB. It's great. It gives you all of that headroom. And then, of course, with the master fader in Studio One now, you've got the K system. So you can set this. I set this to K20. Why do I set that to K20? Go look up in the Studio One user manual, the K system metering. And you'll find a very good in-depth discussion on what these do and what these allow for. This allows for 20 dB of headroom, which is perfect for me, and it really helps. And that's why you see when I play this track. All right. Hello and welcome. See, we've got green meter instead of the peak RMS meter. All right. Hello and welcome to. All right, you'll be able to see it a little bit better now. So if I go and put this back into peak RMS and click on something else, there you go. That's what you guys probably are used to seeing. So if I now go put this back into K20, now you'll see that at the top you have 20, and then you have 0 kind of down here. All right. And you'll also notice that it is color coded. So you got green, yellow, and red. And I know that my mix is in a good place when it's kind of occasionally just going into red, but for the most part hovering in that yellow area. I know I'm in the right spot. Now, when it goes into red, it's not clipping. As you can see, the clip light has not gone on.
All right. Hello.
In fact, you can see those values there. You can see the values there that it's like -6 or so on both left and right channels. So, you know, I'm not clipping. I've still got plenty of headroom. Still got 6 dB of headroom. All right. So I hope that helps everybody. You guys are talking about overdriving tubes and that kind of thing. Gain staging is the first step in what they call top-down mixing. It tends to be, yes, and that's kind of the methodology that I employ for mixing. I tend to do top-down mixing. I start with the master fader, with a smidge of EQ, with maybe a little bit of light compression, bit of, you know, like an optical compressor or a tube compressor, something like that on there, like the LA2A, or maybe a Neve compressor, or something like that, or there's a Brainworks opto compressor that I like to put on here as well, or the SSL bus compressor. That's the other thing of choice that I like, the other compressor of choice that I like to put on the main out, and then I do my bus channels first. So I'm doing EQ and compression on my buses. I'm not touching individual channels. And then the aim is to get my mix as good as I can possibly get it just using the bus channels. And then if I need to go in and do something surgical on a particular individual channel to notch out something that is causing conflict, then I will go and notch out something that causes conflict. And you'll find in my mixes that there are EQ and compressor plugins and all of that on pretty much every bus channel, but then my individual channels don't have hardly anything. You'll find that there's a lot of channels with no plugins on them at all. And I find that it's a very efficient way to mix. Not only do I save myself a ton of processing power, because I'm not using nearly as many plugins than if I was doing it the other way around, going from the bottom up. But not only do I save myself that, I also save myself a lot of time, because I reckon I can get the mix done faster using the top-down method than I do doing it the other way around. But you know, I don't adhere very strictly to what they call a top-down mixing method. I have my own variation of it that I've kind of personalized over the years. But yeah, it's pretty much master, buses, individual channels if they need it, and that's it. And I tend to I mix in context. I tend to put the whole song on loop, pretty much like what I have in this song. I've got the whole song on loop and I'm just letting it play, letting it play, letting it play. It's playing continuously and I'm shaping the mix that way. So yeah, that's kind of my approach to a mix. I've done a couple of videos on it that are a few years old, so maybe I need to update them with some new information actually, because some of the things that I did even 7 years ago have changed, maybe reasonably actually. There are things that I used to believe, particularly about high-pass filtering and stuff, that I no longer really adhere to. I still believe in high-pass filtering. I still believe that high-pass filtering is important, but I'm not kind of the person that says you must high-pass filter everything that is not a bass instrument or a kick drum up, and you must set it to 100 hertz. No. I think that's kind of going to leave you with a very thin-sounding mix, ultimately. Now, not every instrument's going to require a high-pass filter. Some is, and, you know, those that are going to require a high-pass filter, you know, put them where you think it needs it. It doesn't need to be 100 hertz. I mean, that's a good place to start, but don't keep it there. Kind of find that sweet spot where it needs to go. The idea of that kind of set the high pass filter at 100 hertz, what was that designed to do? That was designed to make room for the low-end instruments, for your kick drum, for your bass guitar, for your sub bass, for whatever bass instruments you've got going down there. And you want to make sure that they've got room to breathe and they're not being swallowed up with, you know, unnecessary low information from other instruments. So that's kind of why that principle has probably got spread about on the internet. But you know, like most things that get spread about on the internet, it starts off with somebody saying something that's actually quite useful and quite helpful. And then that 6 people kind of take hold of this idea and they kind of maybe elaborate on it just a wee bit. And they pass that on to 6 other people who then elaborate on that a little bit. And then before you know it, there's an awful lot of people out there who are now receiving quite distorted information on how to high pass filter. So one of the things that we probably ought to, as content creators like I am, is address that and go, actually, high pass filtering is not a bad thing, but you don't need to be arbitrary about it. Be specific, be objective about why you're doing it and for what purpose. All right, and with that sermon preached, all God's people said amen. And that is the end of the show. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in and for coming. I really appreciate it. You guys are the best people on the planet. I really value you a great deal. There is a Studio One meetup going on. I think, is it immediately after? Could somebody confirm whether it's immediately after this show or is it at an hour after this show? I'm not 100% sure whether it's immediately after or what. So if somebody could confirm that, that would be helpful. I would appreciate it. Old School Fungus Soul says, mixing on physical SSL consoles, you do have to do gain staging. Definitely. But you have more options with analog to get levels. Yes, and I learned on SSL consoles. I learned on the SSL 4000E. That was the console that I first learned how to mix on. Way back in 1988, 89. That's kind of when I started learning. Is that meetup starting now? Okay, it's starting now. Great. Okay. If you guys want to go over to the New Orleans meetup, head on over there, follow Billy's link. I'll join you over there in just a few. Thanks, everybody. I wish you all, from a very cold, very snowy Scotland, I wish you all a very good night. Good night.